Well, hi everyone. Welcome back to Book Talk Tuesdays, our video series for independent readers ages 8 to 12. I'm Miss Jessica, and I'm one of the youth librarians at the Chelsea District Library. And I have a special guest and my friend here with me today.
Hi, I'm Emily. I am a huge fan of reading in the Chelsea Library. In fact, it was the first place I was allowed to walk to by myself when I was a kid, and I would fill up a backpack with books from them. So it felt like a wonderful jump back in time to read some wonderful books written for kids.
Thanks for being here, Emily. Now, we have a really interesting, unusual theme today. We're not just looking at realistic fiction, we're looking at quirky realistic fiction. So books that have a little bit of a twist or a surprise or something unexpected about them that usually keeps you reading and makes it so you can't put the book down. So I'm going to start with my first book today. I was so excited for this book and to see that this author had something new coming out this year. My first book is The List of Things That Will Not Change by Rebecca Stead. And if you've read any of her books before, you know that there is always a twist to her books and to her plot lines. Sometimes it might be a little bit of unexpected time travel. Sometimes it might be a narrator who isn't always telling the truth or giving you the full picture. So I was really excited to see her book. This book is no different, but the surprises are a little bit more subtle. They're a little bit less in your face or surprising. The List of Things That Will Not Change is about a girl named Bee, and her parents have gotten divorced. And they've gotten divorced because her dad is gay. And when they sit down for a family meeting to kind of talk through all of this, her parents give her a notebook. And on the first page of the notebook is a list of things that will not change. And this includes that her dad will still love her and her mom will still love her. So even though her whole life has kind of exploded and nothing feels the same anymore, she has this list that she can kind of hold on to and keep with her and remember and add to it as she sort of experiences this big life change for the first time. This book jumps back and forth in time a little bit, so you really have to pay close attention to what's happening and what section you're on. In the most current or in the most up-to-date time, Bee's dad and his boyfriend Jesse are planning their wedding. They're going to get married, and Bee is so excited because Jesse has a daughter too, and they are almost the same age. She's going to meet her future sister for the first time. Some things that surprised me in this book were that even though this is a divorce book, it has an issue at the center of it. Both of these parents, and in fact, all of the adults in her life love her very much. And they are all on her side and they are all supporting her. Her mom and her dad both truly love her and want what's best for her. It's not a divorce story where one parent kind of plays the bad guy role. It's not like that at all. The other thing that really surprised me is that Bee goes to therapy, and it's a good, positive experience for her. I have not encountered this in a middle grade book before, and I thought it was so powerful to see that the therapy experience was normalized in this book, and that it really helped Bee work through some of the things she was feeling. So that's my first choice. Everybody should read it. Everybody should read all of Rebecca Stead's books, but this one especially.
I'm so glad to hear that she has a new book. She is one of my favorite authors. And even though she didn't write when we were kids, as soon as I read her first book, I knew, oh, I'm going to keep reading this author.
I felt the same way too. She's just amazing. I love all of her books.
So the first book I am going to talk about is called It's My Party and I Don't Want to Go. And it's by Amanda Panich. It is surrounding the life of Ellie Katz. Ellie is about to turn 13, and she is Jewish. And in the Jewish faith, 13 is a real big deal birthday. She's going to have her bat mitzvah, which is the coming of age ceremony that is frequently followed by a huge party, which to many 13-year-olds sounds great. Ellie is perfectly comfortable with the idea of becoming an adult in the Jewish faith. She is not at all comfortable with the idea of being the center of attention for an entire day. The book starts with Ellie's older sister's bat mitzvah, so it's a couple of years before the most of the story takes place. And Ellie is so nervous just for the one candle she has to light at her sister's bat mitzvah, you see, oh boy, in a couple years when she has this, it's going to be trouble. Because she really is just the opposite of her older sister, who is so excited to help plan the biggest party for Ellie. But Ellie has other plans herself because she does not want to be the center of attention all day. And so the solution she comes up with is doing anything she can to sabotage the party so that it doesn't actually happen. And boy, does she have to do a lot of different things to manage to sabotage all of the parts. Though you see through the book and can understand her nervousness about the event, it is such a funny read. There's also a great friendship between Ellie and her best friend, who is reluctantly helping Ellie sabotage this event because, you know, that's what you do for your best friend. You help them avoid the things they're most scared of. So I would say this is a really funny, breezy read. I actually sat and read it straight through because I really wanted to see how this was all going to wrap up. And I really didn't see how it would until the very end.
That is wonderful. I love books like that keep you hooked right away and keep you interested. And when a character is so relatable and you can feel like you're on their side and that you understand them right away. I love that so much. Well, my second book is also a friendship book too. It's called The Boys in the Back Row by Mike Young. And there is so much packed into this book. I loved this book. I couldn't put it down. It's about a kid named Matt and his best friend Eric. And they're in the middle school marching band. Matt used to play the flute, and this year he's trying out the drums with Eric. And bullying is pretty rampant at their school. The two boys get picked on all the time for their taste in music and their love of comics. Some kids at school think that they're gay because they hang out all the time, but they aren't. So they have to deal with that a lot too. And some of the bullies are in band. So even the music room, which is often, you know, band kids feel safe in the band room, right? Even that's not always a safe, welcoming place for them. So Matt learns that Eric is going to be moving away at the end of the school year, and both boys are just devastated. They were looking forward to kind of making it through high school together, always having a buddy by their side, and now that's not going to be the case. They hatch a plan. They find out that there's going to be this big comics convention right next door to the theme park where the big band festival is going to be the same weekend. And on the last day of the band festival, that's kind of their free day to explore the park, they decide that they are going to sneak out of the theme park and go next door to the convention and meet their favorite comics artist. So I don't want to give too much away or let you know how that works out because the rest of the plot is really complex and it's very surprising too. So I don't want to give any of that away. It was a really, really good reminder for me as an adult of all of the social drama and how it can affect everything in your life when you're in middle school. Things that don't seem as big a deal to grown-ups often feels like the most important thing to kids, and that we should value that and value those experiences. So that was a really good reminder for me. There are some adults in the story, which gave me some relief. The band director catches a lot of the bullying and is able to break up some things that are happening at most needed points, which was really, really good. And Matt's parents are super cool. They're the kind of parents that when you're a kid, you're going to be like, oh, mom, and a lot of eye rolling. But looking at them from a grown-up perspective, I was like, oh yeah, these parents, they've got this down. But what really stood out to me overall was the subject matter. Sometimes we don't always get to read stories about marginalized kids, and sometimes band kids feel that way, right? It's not always as popular as doing sports or other things for school. So it's a book about boys who are in band. It's a book about boys who love to play their instruments and who have a really, really deep, meaningful friendship. And that's the piece that surprised me so most, was to read this very realistic, kind of wholesome friendship between these two boys, because I haven't really seen that in a book before.
I love friendship books. I think that's why these are my favorite kinds of books. Those quirky, realistic fiction. You are kept on the edge of your seat with the twists that you don't necessarily expect, but the people that you're reading about, the friendships, even if it doesn't mirror exactly what your relationship is with your friends, you can still jump right in. So my next book is one that I really enjoyed, and I wish that it had been around when I was the same age as this main character, because I would have eaten it up. It's called The Messy Life of Blue by Shauna Rayleigh. Blue is in 5th grade, and she is stuck as the only girl in her house. She's got one older brother, 2 really obnoxious younger brothers, and a single dad. When Blue was very young, her mom passed away, and as she's in 5th grade and realizing that she's starting to forget things about her mom, and so she decides that she is going to learn everything she can about her mom and pull back those memories, and also maybe try to be like her mom as well, because she was a really great woman. That sounds like it's a really serious read, but throughout that whole process, you just get the hijinks of a crazy family life and what it is like if you are the one girl with 3 brothers. Each chapter focuses on something different that is happening, and so it keeps you wanting to read the next chapter to see, what is Blue going to get into? What is her obnoxious little brother Jackson going to do? Or the 4-year-old Arnie, who is sweet, but if you spend a lot of time with 4-year-olds, they are exhausting and can make your life hard. She is such a relatable character. There are some embarrassing things that happen to her, and as you're reading it, you start to shrink in your own skin because you feel like you're in Blue space, and then you can take a moment and think, all right, this isn't me. I can laugh at the funny things that happen, because she takes things in stride. This book was just a delight to read. I love the zany family jokes in one hand and then the heart of the story in the other. And you really get to know the members of her family as it continues on. And it's another one that, gosh, when you start reading, you just don't want to stop.
That sounds really good. And you had told me earlier that some of Blue's experiences reminded you of the Alice books, right? By
Absolutely.
Phyllis Reynolds Naylor.
Particularly that first one, The Agony of Alice, which I read, I think, when I was in 5th grade, when I was Blue's age. There were some parallels to that and to some other books that were really popular when we were young readers, which was a fun little nod to me. I think the author did it on purpose, maybe to the parents who might read along with their kids, or to the kids who go to the library and don't just look at the new shelf, but go back to those ones that have stuck around because they're good and they're worth reading.
Yes, the Alice books are so good. So grown-ups out there, if you're watching this and want something a little bit more updated, but still let your kids know about some of those awkward experiences we've all had, sounds like a really good one for that too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my third and final book is called We Dream of Space, and it's by Erin Entrada Kelly. And she's just an amazing writer. She's been popping out a new book every year for the past 4 or 5 years. And in fact, 2 years ago, she won the Newbery Medal for her novel, Hello, Universe. And this book is getting some Newbery buzz too. So I think that would be really exciting if she won again, because this book is really good. And I think it is totally worthy of a Newbery. So what sets this book apart is that it takes place all during the month of January 1986. So this book is technically classified as historical fiction, but that was the year I was born, and so I prefer to think I'm not historical yet. At least I hope not. So each chapter is set up as one day, the events of one day. It doesn't cover every single day in that month, but it covers most of them. So the first chapter is labeled January 1st, 1986. And this is the year that the Challenger space shuttle is going to launch. So the whole book is sort of anticipating and heading toward that date at the end of January. So Cash, Fitch, and Bird are the 3 siblings in this story, and they are all very, very different from each other. And in fact, their whole family is kind of orbiting, everybody's in their own orbit like planets are, and they're sort of circling each other, but not really connecting or coming in contact. And that is kind of the heart of the problems here. Fitch and Bird are twins. Fitch loves to play pinball at the arcade. That's where he can be found almost all the time, sometimes even when he should be in school. And Bird is very studious. She even creates her own instruction manuals for things. So there are some diagrams and pictures throughout the book because she is creating these instruction manuals and writing them out. And so you get to see those. And then Cash is technically their older brother, but he's not very good at school. He's kind of a jock. He loves to play basketball, and he gets held back a year. So they're all in 7th grade together during this book. Their parents aren't very happy either. They bicker and fight a lot. And sometimes they pick on the kids a little bit too. So they're all sort of headed toward the day of the Challenger launch. And the kids' teacher has given her students a project based on the Challenger. They're all divided up into teams, and they're all sort of part of different space crews and have some research projects and different things that they're working on. And that project is what starts to pull the siblings together. They start working with each other and connecting in different ways. So it's not a spoiler to tell you that the Challenger launch is a disaster, and 73 seconds into the launch, it explodes. You can even find some video footage of it. So along with that and all these tentative new connections that the kids have made, those kind of explode too. And that, to me, I think is what makes this book so unique and makes it stand out, is that you get to see how this huge national thing that everybody was watching, they watched updates on the news, really waiting to see what was going to happen with it, and how the author pulls that into the very, very personal relationships between these 3 kids and their family. There's some fun parts too. It's not all doom and gloom. Since it's set in the 80s, this book has a little bit of a Stranger Things vibe. So if you probably haven't been watching that show yourself, so maybe you've heard a little bit about it. The author does the same thing. So she sets up the 80s perfectly with lots of kind of pop culture things that she puts in there, which is really fun to pull out and see. Even if you don't like historical fiction, I think you would love this book.
Yeah, I'm with you. It sounds strange to think of the 80s as a piece of historical fiction, but having something centered around an event in our history, I think must make for a really unique reading experience. When you know something that's going to happen that none of the characters in the book know because it hasn't happened yet.
It almost reminded me, so some of the newer, like I Survived books, it kind of feels like that, like you said, you know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen with the characters, but you know what's going to happen in this big event. And so you get to use that as this kind of setting or backdrop to see how they're going to handle it.
Well, I liked the first 2 books. I read a lot. I absolutely loved this 3rd book. It's called Ben B and the Griefer Teacher, and it's by K.A. Holt. It follows 4 kids, Ben B, Ben Y, Jordan J, and Javier, who have to go to a summer school to retake the reading section of a standardized reading aptitude test. So we all know what those standardized tests are like. And imagine having to go to summer school to retake it. The tie between these 4 kids, in addition to the fact that they all have to retake this test and go to summer school, is that they also all love the game Sandbox, which is very clearly a stand-in for Minecraft. So even though they don't really initially bond in their classes, then at night they go home and play in Sandbox and use the chat field to really build relationships. You get into all 4 kids' heads in the way that they tell the story. And the way that it's written is really unique. A lot of the book is told in verse. So rather than reading full paragraphs on the page, it's kind of like poetry, not rhyming poetry, but where lines are shorter and you're really given these vivid images. Now, that may sound like it would be hard reading, but actually it throws you right in the minds of these kids. You instantly start to bond with each of them, and they each have their own unique challenges on top of the fact that they need some help with reading. But these kids end up building relationships with each other and relationships with their teacher, Ms. J, because they soon realize that they can make a bargain with her. And if they agree to read aloud for 10 minutes of class, then they're going to teach her how to play in Sandbox for 10 minutes. And as you read and both get the reading aloud that they do, and then the Sandbox time, you are instantly in their shoes wanting to know how everything will unfold for them, both at their time at home and when they eventually retake this test. And the good news is it looks like it's the start of a series, so there may be more of these kids.
That sounds wonderful. I'm going to have to put that on hold too. I love novels in verse. It's one of my, I will seek those out to read. So, and they do read pretty quickly too. I hope that you were able to learn about a brand new book to check out and put on hold. If you need help putting these books on hold, you can call a librarian at 734-475-8732, extension 219, or you can email a librarian at ref@chelseadistrictlibrary.org, and we'll help you out. Thanks, Emily, so much for joining me today.
Happy reading. See ya.